Mr. President.
Senator from California.
As the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, who watched with pleasure as we voted this bill out of our committee with total unanimous support, except for one. We had almost everyone. I am delighted that the leader has chosen to go to the reauthorization of the Economic Development Administration. And I'll tell you why. There's really three reasons. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. We know when President Obama took over, he faced a situation where we were losing 700,000, 800,000 jobs a month. Imagine. We were bleeding those jobs. Credit was frozen. We almost lost the auto industry. We had to take tremendous steps to turn this around. And I personally believe, after listening to the experts evaluate what we did, that we did some very important things to stabilize this economy. But clearly, this recession that we're trying to get out of here was the worst since the Great Depression, and the job loss has been severe. So it's very difficult when you lose 7, 8 million jobs in that kind of a downturn. You need robust job creation to get these jobs back. Now, we had a very important bill on the floor dealing with small business, to help small business, and that bill was loaded down with a bunch of extraneous amendments, and Mr. President, never got off the floor. Now is our chance. And I don't mind it if people attach amendments that they think are very important, and we have some reasonable time set aside for those. We have votes on those. I don't have any problem with that. But we've got to get on with the business of job creation. So let me tell you a little bit about the EDA. For 50 years, the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, has created jobs and spurred growth in economically hard-hit communities. And this bill, S-782, will ensure that EDA will continue to create employment opportunities, maintain existing jobs, and drive local economic growth. We know that the EDA's authorization expired in 2008. And by the way, the last time it was voted on, it was, I believe, under George Bush, and it was done by voice vote. And even in the House, it was an overwhelming bipartisan vote, and George Bush signed it. Can't we get back to the days of bipartisanship? I say to my colleagues, this is the moment. A bill that has been voted out of the committee with near unanimous consent, a program that has been in place since 1965, and we know these are tough times. All of our communities are going through tough times. Most of our communities are, and the EDA has worked beautifully with local communities to spur economic development. EDA provides a wide range of assistance to these areas. They fund water and sewer improvements. They help manufacturers and producers become more competitive. And here's the thing about these investments. They attract state dollars, local dollars, nonprofit dollars, private company dollars, so that every dollar we put in, Mr. President, to this program yields us $7 in private sector investment. So this is the first point I want to make to my colleagues and to the American people. EDA leverages federal dollars to create jobs. $1 of Economic Development Administration investment is expected to attract $7 in private sector investment. And this comes from congressional testimony in March of 2011. That's why we got such a great vote out of our committee, and you're going to hear from Senator Cardin later, who serves in a very senior position on that committee. It's rare that we have these type of votes. Since January of 2009, even though the EDA wasn't reauthorized, it still continued to go along under the old program. It continued to go along with appropriations. Since '09, public-private projects that grantees have looked at say they have created 161,500 jobs. Let's look at that chart. Mr. President, this is good news. I have good news today. This is a program that is working for the American people. Since January '09, EDA has funded public-private projects that grantees estimate have created 161,500 jobs. And so what we bring to you is a reauthorization of a very popular program that's been in place since 1965, that has always had tremendous bipartisan support, that is working on the ground, that the local people love. And let me tell you who has already endorsed this bill. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, the American Public Works Association, the National Association of Counties, the American Planning Association, the Association of University Research Parks, the Educational Association of University Centers, the International Economic Development Council, the National Association of Development Organizations, the National Business Incubation Association, the State Science and Technology Institute, University Economic Development Association, the National Association of Regional Councils. These are people on the ground very close to our constituents. Who could be closer than the mayors and the counties? I started out as a county supervisor in a beautiful county called Marin. And I can tell you, on the ground, when you see these federal dollars work, it's very exciting, because the counties, the cities can't do it alone. But with a little infusion of federal funds that sparks $7 for every dollar from private sector folks, it really makes a difference. So I believe this is a win-win situation for our people. In fiscal year 2010 alone, the EDA approved investments of $640 million for 928 projects nationwide that are expected to create 74,000 jobs, save 22,000 jobs, and leverage $10 billion in private investment. So $640 million is expected to leverage $10 billion in private investments. That's a huge, huge leverage. In my home state of California, we're struggling, Mr. President, as so many parts of the country are, with high unemployment rates. EDA approved investments of $24 million in fiscal year 2010 for 27 projects that is expected to create 11,000 jobs, save 400 jobs, and leverage $400 million in private investment. So as I stand here now, because of this program in 2011, we are going to see jobs saved and created. Imagine 11,000 new jobs, 11,000 families that can breathe easier, that can pay the mortgage, that can maybe go out to a restaurant once a week, and that money trickles into the community and helps the small businesses. We now know in California, the city of Dixon is working on a $3 million program for water system improvements. That's 1,000 jobs. The city of Shafter, $2 million for sewer and water improvements, which will allow development of additional 600 acres and 1,485 jobs. Nationwide, you could look at Boeing. We all know the company Boeing. In order to help mitigate the Boeing company's decision to reduce manufacturing jobs in Renton, Washington, EDA invested $2 million in '06 to help build infrastructure to serve the commercial redevelopment of a 42-acre former aircraft manufacturing site. This redevelopment has created a mixed-use campus used by businesses focusing on commercial services, high-tech, and life sciences, 2,500 jobs. So I say to my friends, and right now we seem to have a little struggle getting to this bill. We're hoping to be on it, but at this point in time, we have a Republican dissenter who doesn't want us to move forward and they want a little time to look at this. I hope they use it well and they look at these numbers. The American people want jobs. This is a bill that is directly related to job creation. This is a bill that leverages the federal dollar. Why on earth should there be any objection? This is a bill that passed the Senate with George Bush's president, George W., unanimously. He signed it. It was law. We shouldn't be struggling over going to this bill. We ought to get on the bill. We ought to get off the bill. We ought to send a message to the people. We're serious about job creation. In Duluth, a $3.5 million grant matched by $2.3 from the city built the Duluth Aviation Business Incubator at the Duluth Airport. And this investment helped Cirrus Aircraft grow from a handful of employees to 1,012 employees by '08. The incubator is now leased to Cirrus Design, which has the largest share of the worldwide general aviation market. Here's another one on the East Coast. In '02, the EDA provided $2 million to help build the KnowledgeWorks pre-incubator facility as part of the development of the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. The center and its KnowledgeWorks pre-incubator facility have led to the creation of 2,000 high-wage jobs and the inception of 140 high-tech businesses. Let me repeat that. $2 million infusion from the EDA has led to the creation of 2,000 high-wage jobs and the inception of 140 high-tech businesses as they built this corporate research center in Blacksburg, Virginia. EDA helps in disaster relief. In addition to helping communities respond to job loss from closure of manufacturing plants, for example, or a defense facility, EDA helps communities respond to sudden and severe economic dislocations due to natural disasters. In '08, Congress provided EDA with a total of $500 million in natural disaster assistance through 2 supplemental appropriations. With these funds, EDA was able to assume the role of a secondary responder, working with affected communities to support long-term post-disaster economic recovery in response to hurricanes, in response to floods and other natural disasters. And we know how important that is to have a program that can respond to help FEMA. So I can give you example after example of disaster relief. There was one case in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where EDA provided funding to construct and install an upgraded energy-efficient natural gas-fired boiler system following an '08 flood that destroyed the boiler that had provided steam heat and hot water to St. Luke's Hospital and Coe College. When the utility that owned the damaged facility decided not to rebuild after the flood, it left the hospital and college without a reliable energy supply. And we all know what happens. What happens when there is a disaster and our hospitals can't function? They came in, they made a $4.6 million investment, and it was critical in keeping the hospital and college open and saving hundreds of jobs. So I can only say in closing my opening remarks that let's step back and look at the big picture. I think that Dick Durbin spoke to it quite eloquently. Kathy, I'll put this down. We can leave this one up. Senator Durbin was very clear when he said that we're at a time now where we've got to create jobs. And he gave kind of the overview of what has happened. When Bill Clinton was president, I was privileged enough to be here, sent by the people of California, my first term here. And Bill Clinton faced a deficit, a debt, and a struggling economy. But with very smart plans, we turned it around. What were the smart plans? We reduced the deficit to 0. But we did it in a smart way. How did we do it? We kept on making investments that made sense at that time in energy, high-tech research, biomedical research. We made those investments. We cut out the waste and the fraud. And we said to the people who are billionaires, you know what? You can do a little more for us, please. And they were happy to do it, actually. So the millionaires and the billionaires paid their fair share, and we made smart investments and cut out the waste, fraud, abuse. And we not only balanced the budget, but we created a surplus. In comes George W. Bush. Our Republican friends decided the thing they wanted to do more than anything was to give tax breaks to the billionaires, the millionaires, to the Warren Buffetts who don't need it, to the Donald Trumps who don't need it. They don't need it. The average of these tax cuts to these millionaires and billionaires, hundreds of thousands a year. And what that means is we're short funds here. So what do our Republican friends want to do now? They want to cut Medicare, end it, in order to continue to pay for the tax cuts for the millionaires. It's not necessary to go down that road. Well, that's not before us today. What is before us today is, while we have that battle of how to get that deficit under control, what are we going to do about jobs? So today, we're looking at a program that has strong bipartisan support, that leverages the federal dollars, that gets great reviews, that got out of our committee with only one dissenting vote, and it's the EDA, the Economic Development Administration. They have 6 regions. They have 6 regional offices. Each region, East, West, Midwest, South, each of these regions gets a fair share of the appropriations. It goes to places that have good ideas on how to attract local, state, nonprofit, and private sector funding, and every dollar of EDA investment is expected to attract $7 in private sector investment, thereby saving and creating thousands and thousands of good jobs. So, Mr. President, I understand my Republican friends are going to have a discussion at lunchtime as to whether to allow this bill to move forward. I would hope, from the bottom of my heart, that they will do so. And I would now yield to Senator Cardin.